Last week, a Microsoft executive had to personally respond to a stranger's post on X to explain what a background service running on your computer actually does. That alone should tell you something. The service is called Windows Health and Optimized Experiences. It runs automatically every time your machine boots. A user named Zilly spotted it on July 31st, 2026, ran the numbers on its code, and posted a warning to more than 110,000 people. Microsoft quietly added something to your PC that monitors your CPU, thermals, and battery, then phones home to the company every 15 minutes. Microsoft's response came fast. Scott Hanselman, a vice president and member of technical staff at the company, posted the explanation himself. "The data stays local," he said. "Nothing leaves your machine unless you choose to file a report through the feedback hub." The post ended with a line that made headlines on its own, saying things in all caps for drama does not make them dramatic. He was right about the service he was asked about. He did not mention the other one, because there is a second background service running on your Windows machine right now that does contact Microsoft on a timer. It has been doing it for years. It is not a secret, exactly, but it is not something Microsoft puts in the welcome screen either. And unlike the service that caused last week's panic, this one actually sends data out. It is called distrust. And if you have never heard of it, that is precisely the problem. The story of last week requires understanding both services, because one of them is the story Microsoft wants you to focus on, and the other is the one worth your attention. Windows Health and Optimized Experiences, the service Zilly flagged, has been in Windows 11 since 2025. A developer named Albacore first documented it when it appeared in a Canary build, one of the early test versions Microsoft puts out before wide release. The code inside the service runs a script that samples CPU load, thermals, screen brightness, and battery percentage. The environment variables that control it include one called WinDiag ECP Telemetry Frequency Minutes, which is where the 15-minute figure came from. What the viral post missed is what those samples actually do. When Windows detects the machine is running slow, the service captures a local performance trace and saves it to a folder on your own drive under a path most users will never navigate to. That trace stays there until you personally open the Feedback Hub application, find the category labeled Desktop and System Sluggishness, and choose to submit a report. Only at that point does anything reach Microsoft. Hanselman confirmed all of this, and multiple independent technical journalists verified the code matches the description. The 15-minute monitoring claim was wrong about this specific service. But here is what is worth noting before the story ends there. The reason this particular accusation spread to more than 110,000 people in days is not because the internet is gullible. It is because Microsoft has spent years making distrust the rational position. In May 2024, Microsoft announced a feature for Copilot Plus PCs called Recall. The premise was straightforward: an artificial intelligence assistant that takes a screenshot of everything on your screen every few seconds, indexes the content, and lets you search your own history in plain language. You could ask it to show you the recipe you looked at 2 weeks ago, and it would pull up the exact moment. Privacy researchers had a different description for it. One security expert asked publicly why anyone would need to install keylogging software when Microsoft was now building the capability directly into the operating system. The United Kingdom's Information Commissioner's Office, the government body responsible for enforcing data protection law, wrote to Microsoft to ask what safeguards existed. The encrypted messaging application Signal, which millions of users rely on specifically because its contents cannot be intercepted, built a countermeasure directly into its software to block Recall from capturing its windows. Microsoft delayed the feature twice, overhauled its architecture in response to criticism, made it opt-in, and eventually released it in early 2025. Security researchers who tested the updated version said the company had made serious efforts to address the vulnerabilities. But the architecture, they noted, is fundamentally difficult to secure on shared machines. Recall is why 110,000 people believed a background service was spying on them within 48 hours of a viral post. Microsoft built that distrust. Now the other service. Distrust has a longer official name: Connected User Experiences and Telemetry. In the Services panel inside Windows, that is exactly what it is labeled. It has been part of Windows since the Windows 10 era and carries forward into Windows 11. Unlike WesVC, DiagTrack is not primarily a local diagnostic tool. It is a telemetry pipeline. A journalist named Ed Bott ran a detailed technical investigation, monitoring the service's behavior over multiple days using Windows Task Manager and the built-in Resource Monitor. What he found matched Microsoft's own documentation precisely. DiagTrack performs an initial performance measurement when the machine starts, then checks the contents of 4 log files every 15 minutes. On a machine running on AC power with a wired network connection, that adds up to roughly 33 outbound connections every 8 hours. Each individual transmission is small. Microsoft's own figures put the average size at 1.2 kilobytes. On a metered network or a machine running on battery, the frequency drops once every 4 hours on battery, and not at all on a metered connection by Microsoft's stated policy. What is transmitted depends on which telemetry level is set. Windows 11 distinguishes between required diagnostic data and optional diagnostic data. Required data includes crash reports, error information, and basic system health signals. Optional data adds richer usage information. On Windows Home, you cannot turn telemetry to 0 through official settings. You can only drop it to the required baseline. The service is not hidden exactly. Type services.msc into the run dialog and it will appear by name. But Microsoft has never gone out of its way to explain what it is, what it collects, or how to stop it. When a Windows update arrives, privacy settings you changed can reset. Users in support forums report that DiagTrack re-enables itself after feature updates. The company has built an opt-out mechanism inside settings under privacy and security, and then diagnostics and feedback, but the setting defaults to collecting optional data, and major updates have a documented history of flipping it back on. This is the part of the story the Hanselman response did not address, because nobody asked him about it. The WesVC service generated 110,000 alarmed posts because it had an unfamiliar name, a suspicious description, and a 15-minute variable in its code. It turned out to be benign. DiagTrack has a familiar name, is documented in multiple official sources, has a 15-minute check-in cycle that is verified independently, and has been running on Windows machines without most users' detailed awareness for the better part of a decade. The question is not whether it is technically disclosed. The question is whether Microsoft has ever communicated it clearly. The answer, based on the fact that a corporate vice president had to personally debug a stranger's tweet to explain why one service was safe, suggests the answer is no. If you subscribe to this channel, the odds are good that you already distrust the default settings on a Windows machine. The comments on this channel's own polls show it. 43% of the audience has already moved to Linux. 33% named surveillance as their reason. This video is not for them. This video is for the 30% who are still on Windows and who have never looked inside the Services panel on their own machine. Here is what you can do right now. Open the Run dialog by pressing the Windows key and R at the same time. Type services.msc and press Enter. Scroll down to Connected User Experiences and Telemetry. That is DiagTrack. Right-click it, open Properties, click Stop to halt it immediately, and then set the startup type to Disabled. Click Apply, then OK. You should also disable the WesVC service using the same steps if you want to reduce background services, though what it sends is local. Open Services, find Windows Health and Optimized Experiences, and disable it the same way. If you want to go a layer deeper, open the Registry Editor by pressing Windows key and R, typing regedit, and navigating to Heike Local Machine, then Software, then Policies, then Microsoft, then Windows, then Data Collection. Find or create a DORD value called Allow Telemetry and set it to 0. This enforces the restriction at a policy level and is more resistant to being reset by updates. Back up your registry before making any changes. One important caveat: on Windows Home Edition, telemetry cannot be reduced to absolute 0 through official means. Microsoft retains some required diagnostic data regardless. What you are doing when you disable DiagTrack is cutting the optional layer, the richer usage data, the crash details, The session reporting. Required baseline signals still flow through other channels. If you are on Windows Home and you want complete control over what your machine transmits, the only permanent answer remains what 43% of this audience has already chosen. Microsoft was right last week. The specific service that went viral does not send data every 15 minutes, but the conversation it started was legitimate. Because the service that does run on that cycle is sitting in your services panel right now, and the company that put it there has never made a serious effort to put it in plain language for the people it affects. If this is the kind of thing you want to know before it becomes a headline, hit subscribe. We watch what runs in the background so you do not have to.